And tonight, another big drop of declassified UFO UAP files from the government. And if you watch the show, you know how frustrating it is when a lot of these videos are released with no context. And yes, once again, we are seeing videos today without the government telling us what it shows or what this thing is in a canyon or what that thing is. All we know is that it was recorded by a government platform or a cell phone. There's no answer on what it is. Maybe this is a drone. Maybe it's a balloon floating around. And it's not just this video. There are other videos, too, some of them taken over water. But there is one case finally that has some actual interviews with the crew attached. It is pretty wild. And here is how this story goes right here. In 2021, an American gunship was flying over the Gulf of Oman. It dropped some sort of flare into the water for target practice, right? Well, the report says that when the flare touched the water, the weapons officer looks at it with the sensor. They see these two small orbs hovering over the flare for about 15 seconds. So what do they decide to do? They pull the trigger. They pull that trigger, and the crew, the officer says that in between the trigger pull and the recoil, the UAPs fly away, and from that point, it is on. The crew starts to see 25 or more of these cold orbs flying around as they describe them. Some of them apparently pull out cell phones. They start to capture some of those videos. Those are those videos that you see. It's hard to see exactly what they're shooting because they're shooting a screen, but they describe the orbs as flying in these formations that like interact with each other. At one point, they talk about them flying in a coordinated formation similar to how dolphins playfully swim in a pond. Again, this is an official government document. They clock the speeds from about 250 miles an hour to 1,300 miles an hour. They try to save all of the good footage, not this like crappy cell phone footage. But all of a sudden, their DVR inexplicably failed. So it seems like all we have is their word, this narrative, and at least some of these cell phone videos. But what are we supposed to make of this from a rational point of view? Let's bring in Harvard's renowned astronomer, Avi Loeb, and the head of the Scientific Advisory Council for all things UAP. Professor, great to see you. I'm not sure if you've gotten a chance to really dive into this Oman case, but what do you make of it?
Well, thanks for having me. The only interpretation I could think of is that we're dealing with a coordinated swarm of drones. This is a real technology that was already employed back in 2021. And the characteristics of formation flying, reaction to a threat, interaction with each other is exactly the kind of behavior you would expect from an autonomous swarm of drones that somehow these drones communicate with each other. But there are some unusual features of this report. For example, the speed reached 1.7 times the speed of sound, and that would not leave an object, a solid object, cold. It's unclear what kind of propulsion these objects have if they can reach Mach 1.7. So there are many mysteries here, and I completely agree with you that it's an unresolved case. And there are two other interesting unresolved cases. If you want, I can go into them.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to ask you. I mean, this one is the case, to me at least, that seems the most similar to the famous 2004 like Nimitz Tic Tac video. But going through some of these other cases, the lack of the video and the data is very frustrating. But there are some reports in here of an interview that are downright weird. Like the government released some artistic renderings, if we have it, of an incident in the desert where some guys see a UAP. One of them has night vision goggles, and you see what that might look like through an artist. But then they go on, and he checks his clock, and it's an analog clock. And I think there's a discrepancy of like 20 minutes between his watch that is analog and then the digital clocks that he's around. What do you make of that?
Well, we know of time dilation in physics, but it cannot be produced in this particular case as a result of space-time curvature, because the gravitational tide of such an encounter would have dramatic consequences. It would tear the bodies of the witnesses apart. So based on known physics, the only sense I can make of it is that the time difference was initiated by some electromagnetic effect on the digital clocks, which was not effective on the analog clock. But what kind of an electromagnetic signal, I have no idea.
It's so fascinating. I'm so glad that you're looking at these with such detail. It's also got some more interviews, quite a few interviews of people that saw black triangular-shaped craft that are kind of like the Arizona lights way back in the day. One military pilot had seen a lot of lights in the sky that, when I was reading his description, it almost sounds like maybe flaring from satellites. But then he goes on to talk about seeing this massive triangle in the sky above a base in Afghanistan. It's tough because you've got different types of descriptions of things that are unexplained in the sky from the same people, from people that are trained aviators. Do you put stock in some of these triangle reports?
Well, definitely. I mean, this description of a giant triangle keeps repeating. I heard a number of other reports decades back of the same thing. One of the reports came from a physicist that I know who witnessed that. In this particular case, the description is that the size of the triangle was about 500 feet, 150 meters, and it was moving at a speed of about 150 knots or 77 meters per second. The problem here is that no existing operational aircraft matches this size and speed. The largest aircraft ever built is the Strato Launch Rock, and that spans about 385 feet, 117 meters, so it doesn't match up the description. And so we're left with the question of, is this report reliable? Unfortunately, we don't have the actual digital data from sensors to confirm it. And that's what needs to be done, basically. In order for us to resolve these cases, we need better data. The same pilot also talks about all kinds of orbs that last for hours that cannot be explained by satellites. And so this brings me to the point that this should be a serious matter that scientists should be curious about. Skeptics who deny the significance of these anomalies are not curious enough to be genuine scientists. So either we're dealing with unknown natural phenomena, secretive black projects, or these anomalies reflect manifestations of alien technologies, and resolving them is a win-win situation for either national security or fundamental science.
And I pray that tonight is the night that you get the call from the White House or wherever that, ends with you telling the rest of the world what the heck is going on. Dr. Avi Loeb, really appreciate you stopping by. Thanks so much.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.